What's up, guys? Travis here. Here to do my 145 predictions. Top to bottom, it's a decent card on paper. Definitely doesn't jump out. I can see why some fans are not particularly excited for this card, other than the main event. But I'm looking forward to it. So let's get right down to it. First Facebook preliminary. I'll go work my way from the bottom to the top. First Facebook fight. Wow, Marcus Brimish versus Maximo Blanco. I wish this fight was on the FX card because I think this fight could be the best fight of the card. It's a very underrated fight, and yeah, I think this one's gonna be a banger for as long as it lasts. We all know what Maxi Blanco brings to the table. He's very exciting. I mean, he has bombs in his hands, decent wrestler, good jiu-jitsu. And he's dropping down the featherweight, which is good because as we saw in the Pat Healy fight, he was very undersized. And, definitely a good move for Blanco to move down to featherweight. Marcus Brimic, he has some upside to him. He's still a work in progress, in my opinion. Decent striker, more of a brawler, decent wrestler, and I haven't seen much of his grappling yet. But we might see some. Well, it depends how this fight goes. But I like Maxi Blanco pretty big in this. I just think he's too experienced for Marcus Brimic right now. Yeah, I'm gonna say a late first, early second round, like clean knockout. Maxi Blanco can do that. Then the second Facebook fight, Keith Wisniewski versus Chris Clemens. I don't really care much about this fight. Wisniewski, journeyman fighter, decent everywhere. And I don't really know much about Chris Clemens. Looking at his record, he seems like he likes to go for the knockout a lot. He's beaten a few guys I've heard. Let me look it up. Okay, yeah, he knocked out Rich Clemente, knocked out Jonathan Goulet, who doesn't. And then before that, most of his losses have been to... Three of his four losses have been to John Alessio, who's on this card, Jesse Bongfeld, Rory Markham. So I'm not expecting a lot probably out of this guy for the future, but I think he should win this fight. I'm not going to say a method because I don't really know much about him. I haven't seen a single fight of his, but Keith Wisniewski is not UFC material, never has been. And yeah, Chris Clemens, like I said, Clemens seems like to go for the knockout a lot, so I'll say a second round TKO. Alright, on to the FX part of the preliminary card. We got Mac Danzig versus Efrain Escudero. It was a pretty good fight, definitely two guys the UFC have definitely underperformed in the UFC. They're two tough winners, but after like their first two fights where they looked good after tough, they definitely have not looked well. Efrain Escudero came in, won tough, then looked great against Cole Miller. Then right after that fight, looked awful in the Dunham fight. Looked awful in the Dan Lozon fight, even though he won. And then he looked awful in the Charles Oliveira fight. Left the UFC, got a few wins outside the organization. Came back and lost the decision to Jacob Volkman, which he almost won at the end. And Mac Danzig, like I said, won tough, looked good against Bocek, and then just underperformed, except for the Joe Stevenson fight, where he knocked him out pretty good. As for my pick for this fight, I gotta go with Mac Danzig. I just think Efrain Escudero has motivation problems, and he has motivation making the weight correctly. He's just one of those guys that I just can't pick Efrain Escudero. Would I be surprised if he won this fight? Not at all. But I like Mac Danzig. I'm going to say a close unanimous split decision. I think it will be close regardless, but I like Mac Danzig for the win. Alright, next fight, John Makdessi versus Anthony Njokuani. This one's pretty simple. John Makdessi has no business at 155. And Edgekwani is probably gonna show him the door to 145. He's gonna be much bigger, much longer reach, and I actually think he's a more diverse striker than Makdessi. You know, Makdessi is good with the spinning back fists, the karate kicks, the really flashy stuff. Anthony Edgekwani is like that as well, but I think he has more tools. He has good Thai, Muay Thai, good clinch, good knees, and like I say, he's long and lanky, and I think Makdessi's gonna have a problem getting inside. But yeah, I think this fight will stay on the feet all 3 rounds, and I like Edgekwani to win clear-cut unanimous decision, like a 30-27, because I think Makdessi has a good chin, and I don't see Edgekwani stopping him. So let's move on. Matt Brown versus Stephen Thompson. Apparently, this is a very debated fight on here. I would not be surprised if Matt Brown beats Stephen Thompson, because Stephen Thompson is still a question mark in my opinion. Looking at his record, well, not really his record, but his background, this is what I'm picking Stephen Thompson to win, and I'm picking him to win by submission, because one, Matt Brown, anybody can pretty much tap out Matt Brown to get a hold of his neck. But Stephen Thompson is a lifelong mixed martial artist. He's not only a black belt in karate, I believe he's also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So this guy's, I think he's been trained since like 5 years old. He knows a lot of different disciplines. He's just very inexperienced in the cage or ring. And Matt Brown is a good litmus test for a prospect, to see where a prospect is at. Some have beaten Matt Brown, some have not. For example, James Wilkes. But as for my pick, I like Stephen Thompson. I'm going to say like a 2nd round submission, guillotine, or rear naked choke. Yeah, Matt Brown, I don't know. The guy is, I like Matt Brown. He's very exciting, and he could be a great fighter. But for some reason, he just can't get past that bad submission defense. I don't know what's wrong. And then the last fight on FX, Travis Brown versus Chad Griggs. If this fight ends in the 1st round, it'll be positive, because if it goes past the 1st round, I think this fight is going to be horrendous to watch. Also, the other heavyweight fight on here. But as my pick, I think these guys are going to come out, and we're just going to see arms swinging everywhere until somebody drops. And I think the person that's going to drop is Chad Griggs. I think Travis Brown is slightly more technical. Actually, Travis Brown was sort of like Griggs when he came into the UFC, but he's got more technical, and I think he has more power, better wrestling, better ground game. Travis Brown, 1st round knockout. Let's move on. Alright, main card, Mark Bocek versus John Alessio. John Alessio is a good replacement for Matt Wyman, so no complaints here. The only problem with John Alessio is it seems like when he fights somebody, a higher caliber fighter, he can't win. That's the problem with his career. He's like a journeyman fighter who's good at everything, but he just can't beat the good fighters, and Mark Bocek is one of those fighters. Mark Bocek, I think his striking is slightly better, his wrestling is better, and his jiu-jitsu is obviously better. I like Bocek pretty big. I'm going to pick Bocek by a 2nd round submission, rear naked choke. I think he seems to like that, doing those a lot. But I think Alessio will give him a good fight. It will be competitive. It won't be a wash. Mark Hominick versus Eddie Egan. I don't really care about this fight. I don't know why I understand why it's on the main card. They want to promote Mark Hominick still as a contender, and he's Canadian, and they want to keep the Canadian fighters, in the mix. The fight I rather would want to see on the main card actually is Maxi Blanco, Marcus Brimich. But I can see why they put it on this card again. Eddie Egan, decent fighter, but I just don't think he's UFC caliber. Mark Hominick, we know about him, good striking, decent ground game, but yeah, and I think he should win this, pretty easily. I'm gonna say Mark Hominick by actually I'm gonna go with submission. Mark Hominick does have a decent ground game. I think he catches Eddie Egan in the 2nd round, maybe with the arm bar or a rear naked choke, somewhere along those lines. Alright, Miguel Torres versus Michael McDonald. I like this fight a lot. I'm hoping though the old Miguel Torres shows up, the guy who goes in there to fight. I understand why he's been fighting the way he does the last few fights, but this is a fight where it's going to prove if he still belongs in that contendership. Because Miguel Torres is kind of a gatekeeper now, and this is Michael McDonald's big test to see if he's going to be a contender at bantamweight. And I'm going to pick Michael McDonald to win. I just think Miguel Torres, he's been figured out. You can get inside his reach and you know, pick him apart or take him down. You will beat Miguel Torres. Miguel Torres last fight beat Nick Pace. I thought he won the Demetrius Johnson fight. So Miguel Torres is just either he looks great or he doesn't. I just think Michael McDonald is one of these new breed of fighters that's going to be a hard fight for anybody in the bantamweight division. I'm going to say Michael McDonald takes at least 2 rounds and wins a unanimous decision, or maybe a split, but we shall see. I'm looking forward to the fight though. Brendan Schaub versus Ben Rothwell. Like, once again, if this fight goes past the first round, it's going to get ugly. And unfortunately, I think it will. I think Schaub is going to pick Rothwell apart. I'm hoping Rothwell catches him because Brendan Schaub is a prick. He's a piece of shit. I don't like Brendan Schaub. Dude has an ego and he can't back it up. But unfortunately, I have him winning this fight. I'm going to say unanimous decision. Maybe losing the first round, and then just Rothwell's going to gas out. And then he just picks him apart in a pretty boring, ugly fight. Alright, co-main event, Rory McDonald versus Che Mills. This is a good fight. I'm pretty excited for this fight. I think what makes this fight really interesting is that I think Che Mills could get an upset here. I'm not picking him to win, unfortunately, but I think if it stays on the feet, Che Mills always has a chance. Fortunately, I think Rory McDonald is smart enough not to stay on the feet too long with Che Mills. I see Rory McDonald taking Che Mills down, and I have him subbing Che Mills late in the first round. Sorry, Kaz. I know I like Che Mills, but I just think this is a bad matchup for him. I think you said Rory's going to win a decision. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but my gut tells me Rory McDonald, first round submission. And then we get to the main event, Jon Jones, Rashad Evans. First off, let me just say, this fight will not be a wash for Jon Jones. I think this is going to be Jon Jones' toughest fight. Because Rashad Evans has the speed and wrestling to compete with Jon Jones. Being shorter is actually very advantageous for Rashad Evans against Jon Jones. He doesn't have to get too low for takedowns. Don't be surprised if Rashad Evans wins this fight. Let me just say that. But I'm not picking him to win. I got Jon Jones. I think he's eventually going to catch Rashad. You know, his chin is questionable. I don't think it's bad as some people says, but it is questionable. And I got Jon Jones winning either a late third, 4th round TKO or KO. I don't see Jones subbing Rashad Evans. Rashad is short and stock. He doesn't really have a lot of neck length or limbs to really get a hold of. So yeah, I like Jon Jones, late 3rd, 4th round TKO. Yeah, guys, just let me know comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this card. And yeah, take care.